Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome. Today's topic is John S. Ray's Oberlin College Diary, 1944 to 1945. Part 8. This was originally published as a Zook Family Memories Collection, or ZFMC, number 21, on June 27, 1989. There's a break in his diary from August 3rd to October 29, 1944, and I believe he was in Sandusky, Ohio, working. But not sure what he was doing. His family had moved from Marion, Ohio to Sandusky, Ohio. Oberlin College, third year, 1944 to 1945. October 30th. Threw my stuff together this morning and this afternoon, and we took off from Sandusky about 4:30 p.m. We found the house, met Mrs. Bryant, and went downtown for supper at the Standard. I talked with Carolyn Scholand and found out that Ginny Amerio and Phil Schwartz were married yesterday. A wonderful couple. Lots of luck to them. Bruce came in while we were eating and was really in the pink. He'd just seen Gretchen. Darn good to see him again. I came back to the house, said goodbye to the folks, and got unpacked for several hours. I got dressed up and went downtown again. Couldn't find anyone for a while, but ran into Al Tucker in Dory Hall. Had a fine old talk for about 2 hours. They're all in favor of a hayride Saturday night. Paul Engstrom and I also had a good talk. Then Gretch, Bruce, and I threw it around for a while. Good old Duffer was back at the house. What a fine guy. Found out that Norman Richard Weinstein is here in the house. Bosworth really slipped us a Mickey. John Tucker, a rather doubtful character, is also here. John Porter we think is all right. Duff, Bruce, and I bulled for several hours and finally knocked it off about 1 o'clock a.m. Bruce tells me he has a feeling that he and Gretchen are going to break up. October 31st. Duff, Bruce, and I had breakfast at the Vars. We waited table at Gables this noon for the first time. Somehow the girls don't seem quite as fine as they were last year. We also don't have as many waitresses as last year. The three of us just loafed and bulled around this afternoon. Very enjoyable to just sit around and not have to do anything. This evening, Kay Denman and I went to the non-date brawl in Warner Gym. The girls were led around like cattle. There were so darn many of them. I understand Kay has broken up with her Marine, so maybe we'll have a little fun this term. Had a fine old time. The lads didn't go beering tonight because it was too late. November 1st, 1944. I rolled out at 6:30 this morning to work breakfast. Mighty sleepy in our first art survey class. The class is large and mostly women. The lights are low and you just doze off. Dr. Broman took our first organic class. Dr. Renfro is going to be the regular professor. It's about half Navy. I bought books and stuff this afternoon. A girl by the name of Betsy Moore committed suicide this afternoon at Gables. There was no apparent reason at all. Her father committed suicide 2 years ago. Very sobering business. Duff and I double-dated to the Wreck and Timmy's. Corinne Dorff and I went together. I don't quite understand her. I knocked it off pretty early. I almost forgot about Jack Tucker. He finally got here. He's only a second-term frosh. Didn't get along too well his first term, I understand. He's still a question mark. November 2nd. I worked breakfast and then went back to bed until 11 a.m. Our new German professor is a young and attractive woman. However, I'm pretty rusty. I caught up on my letter writing this afternoon. Kay and I went to the Wreck this evening. Afterwards, I went by First Church and signed up for choir again. Jack Tucker and I picked up Duff and Bruce for a little jaunt out to Presti's. Good fun. November 3rd. I had 3 classes this morning. There are nearly 30 Marines in my physics class. I hope it stays that way. We checked out our organic desks this afternoon and had a short meeting about advanced quant. There are 6 girls and myself. 3 unknowns in the course. This evening, Congressional Church had its first choir rehearsal. Biggest group I've seen. Duffer, Tucker, and I went down to Timmy's this evening and had a fine old time. November 4th. I worked breakfast and then studied German until 10:30. Our German professor looks mighty tough from here. It rained last night, so we're postponing our hayride until next weekend. This afternoon we got out and kicked around the old pigskin. We are all pretty badly out of shape. John Mitchell showed up in Gable's parlor this evening in a sailor suit. The first time we've seen him in about 2 years. We put him up for the night in Weinstein's room. Kay and I went to an orchestra all-college this evening in the MB. It was a fine time, although rather weird in some respects. It seems that she is rather bitter about college right now. She's changed from pre-med to sociology and doesn't know exactly what she can or should do with it. November 5th. I went to church this morning for the first time in 5 months and sang in the choir. The lads did a fine job in Weinstein's room while I was gone. I did a little physics this afternoon, and this evening we studied until 9, and then Duffer, Bruce, and I went to the show. This evening we elected Don Bayer president of the Y at a cabinet meeting. A good man. November 6th. Miss Von Wenck is really giving us the finger on this hayride deal. It seems that we also cannot have the hayride on Sunday night. So I got busy again and got a hay rack from the Worcester Dairy, and a chaperone I am positive is acceptable. Dry labbed our first experiment in organic chemistry because there were other things to do. I turned in our intramural eligibility list. 4 of them are in so far. I am doing my damnedest to get the young Venus next door to go with me Wednesday evening on our checker night. Her mother and father are both very much against our dating. It's a challenging situation. I got a letter from Duffy. It seems that she and the sergeant were all set to get married when his overseas orders came. That's life. This evening, Bruce, Jack, and I made a little foray down at the Oberlin Inn. Quite successful. November 7th, 1944. Well, it looks like Franklin D. Roosevelt is in again. We've been listening to the returns this evening, and unless some drastic reverses occur, Dewey will have to retire into the background with Hoover, Landon, Wilkie, and all other recent Republicans. We got off to a pretty slow start in advanced quant this afternoon, and I am knocking it off early. November 8th. Roosevelt is in for sure this morning. Didn't have any of my 3 classes prepared, but was lucky enough to get through them all right. Dr. Renfro, our new organic chemistry professor, looks like a good Joe. We got the ball rolling in quant this afternoon. Tonight was checker night here at the house. We were all supposed to date new women. However, I got stuck, and at the last minute asked Corinne. We went to the rec and then to the library. We'd only been there about half an hour when Bruce, Duff, and I and our dates went to Timmy's. We really had a good time. Everybody in good voice. Jack Tucker went to Browning House this morning with a bad throat. I hope he doesn't stay very long. November 9th. Finally sharped up enough in German to answer a question correctly. We had our first lab in physics this afternoon. It was very dull. I spent all the time learning to run a slide rule. I stayed home from Glee Club to study. Instead of studying, Bruce and I went over to Gable's and fried the T-bone steak we borrowed from the Oberlin Inn the other evening. Very enjoyable, but we both got stomach aches. I finally got down to business about 11 o'clock and studied organic chemistry until 12:45. We are really shoving the old malarkey down Weinstein's throat. We think he's taking it seriously. God help him if he is. November 10th. I didn't get enough sleep last night and have been shot all day. Last night I didn't get around to doing my physics problems, so Denny collected them this morning for the first time. It was very embarrassing. This afternoon we took boiling points in organic lab. Our touch football game was postponed because of wet grounds. We practiced anyhow, and boy oh boy are we sore. I cut choir practice this evening in favor of beer dates. What a bunch of stinking Phi Betas are over at Thompson. Duff, Bruce, and I went beering at Timmy's with Corinne and 2 of her friends. I was with her roommate, Betty Habif, a really fine girl. I think I'll date her next week. We also took a cold bottle of beer over to Tucker at Browning House. A large charge. He really appreciated it. I stopped by Allen Hospital on the way back and saw Alan Gorsk. November 11th. I got caught with my pants down in German class this morning, so I stayed in this afternoon and hit the German instead of playing football. The upperclassmen knocked off the freshmen 6-0. This evening we started off our social season with a real bang. It was a fine evening for our hayride, and we really did a job on it. We had 29 people on the wagon and cleared $1 on the whole deal. The old boy who was driving wasn't too sharp, and we backed off into the ditch once. Duff, Bruce, Ed Platt, and myself and our dates all stopped off at Presty's on the way back. We had a good old song fest. Kay and I went together. We had a much better time than I expected. I'm too tired for the poker party. November 12th. I slept until 10 o'clock a.m. and the folks came over shortly after. We all went into Cleveland and saw the Green Bay Packers wallop the Cleveland Rams, 42-7. A terrific game. Don Hutson is an all-time great football player if I ever saw one. What bruisers those guys are. What a game. Everyone in the family is okay, and Mother tells me that Harold Freilich is to be married over Christmas. It still sounds fantastic to me. I had supper uptown with Duff, and finally got the 2 physics problems I was stuck on. November 13th. Denny took my back physics problems without a word this morning. Pretty lucky. I'm not going to slip up again, I hope. Took melting points in organic lab this afternoon. Not bad at all. I worked on organic this evening. It's getting pretty rugged. Duff, Bruce, and I went to the Late Show, arsenic and old lace. We all got a big bang out of it. On the way home, we helped change the tire on a Greyhound bus. Our help was getting a bucket of water to pour on the smoking tire. Really warm. November 14th. I got on the ball in German class about time. Tried to get some dates this evening, but all the women were out. Kay tells me that she is going to be in Browning House this next weekend for a general rest and checkup. This is her 7th straight term. Probably has something to do with her trouble. I hope there's nothing really wrong. Bruce got a letter from home saying that his father is in England on some special work for the FBI. It has something to do with the communist movement here in the United States. It must have been vitally important or Mr. Partridge wouldn't have gone. His health is still pretty bad. It must be the communist movement over here is much more active than most of us realize. November 15th. Our organic chemistry is getting rough. Denny pulled a quiz on us in physics. However, I think I got it all right. My first 2 results on my iron unknown were only accurate to 15 parts over 1,000. Not too sharp. I'll just keep on working on it and hope for the best. This evening, Duff and I double-dated to the Rec, the library, and then Timmy's. A very fine evening. I went with Betty Hobbief, a sophomore and Dorf's roommate. A torrid apple in some respects, good for the soul. Wes Simon is back in town until Monday, and looking taller than ever in his RCAF uniform. Another good Joe. The upperclassmen had a rather disgusting meeting in the Y building to decide about initiating the new freshmen. Jim Morris chaired the meeting, and it stunk rather strongly of Dean Bosworth. November 16th. I got up an hour and a half late this morning, but still managed to get my German done okay. The physics lab was very dull. This evening, Duff, Bruce, and I went to the Y building for another meeting about hazing the frosh. Then we went over to the MB and listened in on the frosh meeting. It seems that John Hoffman has been indoctrinating the new frosh, the source of the whole trouble. Anyhow, it's all settled, and the upperclassmen are going to help the second-term frosh with the hazing. Bruce and I made a quick trip down to the Oberlin Inn to get a little food to sustain us through our late hours of study this evening. It's 1:30 a.m., and I just finished my physics problems, and Bruce is still working. November 17th. I'm afraid I botched the lab quizzes in organic chemistry this afternoon. We knocked off lab early to play football. We beat 3rd East without too much trouble, 12-0. I skipped choir practice again and went to the football rally. Bruce and I picked up 2 women in Timmy's afterwards. Boy, were they hungry. There is really a man shortage on this campus. Didn't get any studying done at all this evening. November 18th. I slept about an hour after the alarm went off, but still got my German done by 11. This morning, Duff, Bruce, and I triple-dated to the last football game of the season. Betty Hobbief and I went together. Oberlin looked pretty good this afternoon and won their only game of the season, 26-0, against Ohio Wesleyan. I managed to kick over the quart of milk we took along and spilled it all over the place. We all went to the tea dance in Rec Hall afterwards. This evening, Betty and I went to the All-College. Afterwards, we all met at Timmy's, but we just weren't on the ball. Vern gave us about 3/4 of a beer glassful of some very vile rum. I must admit it made me dizzy. Really had a large schwantz down at Cranford with Betty, and came home in a car with Bob Miller. We really gave Norman the Mormon the works this evening. I don't know just how much he's soaking up, probably too much. November 19th. This Sunday morning breakfast deal has got to go. This morning at breakfast I was really shot. I cut church and slept through to lunch after I got back. This afternoon we went over to see Tucker. He's going to leave school next Sunday for the rest of the term and go to the Cleveland Clinic. Then he's planning to come back for the spring term and on through the summer. The poor guy. Bruce and I went over to Keep's open house and met a certain Caroline Johns. Very fine girl. This evening Duff and I found some books on the family, etc. We got together in our room and read out loud for nearly 2 hours. The author was really on the ball. Then Bruce and I decided to get Wood's dates. He phoned the 2 pickups from Friday night, and we went down to Timmy's. However, they could only take 10 pers because of a house meeting, so it was no soap. Very discouraging. Once again, we got no studying done. November 20th. I got my physics done this morning before class and had to leave organic lab early again so I could play football. The weather was wet and rainy, so we took the game by forfeit against Roothouse. This evening I acted as upper-class counselor of a group of freshman men in a discussion on education. It was held at Mr. Kennedy's and was fairly interesting, I hope, for the frosh. I didn't crack a book this evening. November 21st. Just barely got my German done before class this morning. I finished up my iron unknown this afternoon with an error of about 5 parts over 1,000. I've been appointed publicity chairman for the Y. I'm getting my committee organized. Finally got down to studying this evening for the first time this week. I wonder how long this business can last. November 22nd. A rather weird thing has happened. It seems that I have 3 blue books announced for next Wednesday. It will probably be very interesting. I turned in my iron this afternoon. Bruce and I went over to see Tucker this evening. We've been going over pretty regularly. Duff and I double-dated to the Rec, the library, and Timmy's. Kay and I had a fine old time. I didn't hit the books too hard this evening. November 23rd. Well, today was Thanksgiving. However, we had classes and labs as usual. Kay and I went to the Rec again, the library, and got some Pepsis at Timmy's. It snowed this evening while we were walking to Timmy's. Great sport just to walk along through the snow. We both had a good time. Bruce and I both stayed up pretty late doing physics. November 24th. We worked breakfast and were both pretty tired and sleepy all day. I got everything done in our organic lab for a change. Bruce and I went over to see Tucker for about an hour. He's going to take off for the rest of the term tomorrow. Poor guy. Duff and I went to a fine show afterwards. Very inspiring in several places. November 25th. I overslept an hour and a half this morning, but still managed to get through German class. This afternoon, all 3 of us began our grind for the barrage of blue books coming up. I worked on art survey all afternoon and all evening. First Saturday night of the term we've spent in. Well, it's got to be done if we're going to get any marks at all this term. Tucker left for Cleveland. November 26th. I cut church and ground away on art survey this morning and studied again this afternoon, and then excuse me. And then Bruce and I went to the Gables open house. Very good time. I pounded on survey this evening and Duff reviewed me on it. All in all, an extremely dull day. November 27th. Caps really gave us a big wad of stuff to choke down in survey this morning. What's more, he's including this lecture in our blue book. I finally got the reference book in survey and looked up the pictures I need. Denny tried to scare the pants off everyone about the physics blue book Wednesday. I finished up 3 experiments in organic lab this afternoon. I'm only behind in 1 experiment now. I went to the theology lounge this evening and pounded on organic chemistry until 11:30 p.m. I saw a sailor this evening who was here last year with the unit. He had since gone to midshipman school and the strain had been too much for him. He's at Great Lakes now and has lost 30 pounds. He doesn't look like the same guy. Incidentally, I'm getting very damn sick of all this studying. November 28th. Our German assignment started where I left off reading this morning. Did just an average job of bluffing it. Cut quant lab to study for the organic blue book tomorrow. I finally got the stuff organized late this afternoon and worked on chemistry 2 hours more this evening. My head was really splitting. I felt like I was going to blow sky high. I looked over my physics and I'm ready for bed. I spent about half an hour after supper talking with Ginny Amerio and Phil Schwartz and looking at her wedding pictures. I mean their wedding pictures. Beautiful. They're both fine kids. The letter from Duff this morning says that she's all in favor of our jaunt to Chicago. Ginny, not very consistent with G's and J's, and Phil's announcement also came this morning. November 29th. This has been a day to stop all days. I took 3-hour blue books this morning. Here are my predictions. Art Survey, C+. Organic Chemistry, C+. And Physics, C. Should have had Denny postpone the physics after all. Anyhow, I'm very relieved that they're over. Started my CUNI Unknown in Quant Lab. This evening, Duff and I double-dated to the Rec, Timmy's, and Vespers. Betty and I had a short but good schwantz. Don Bayer and I are trying to scare up a big party before the New Year's formal. I went out to Pinky's with Duffer and Eddie after leaving Betty. I wrote a letter for the review out there suggesting a better arrangement for the New Year's dance. Pross is going to run it Friday. Finally, a group of us uprooted some sort of Japanese arch down the road and leaned it against a tree in Tappan Square. Ho-hum. I'm going to bed. Before I forget it, Duffer schwantzed Eddie tonight for the first time. Said it was mighty fine. November 30th. I finally managed to get a haircut this afternoon. A haircut is cheaper than a dog license, I always say. Went to Glee Club this evening for a change and bought some cigars, and Duff and I smoked them in Norman the Mormon's room with the windows closed. Quite a fog. Gave Norman some more indoctrination. December 1st. Well, the damn physics came out just like I thought, a big fat 75. That's a hell of a way to start a course. Some consolation in the fact that nearly all of the marks were low. I'm nearly completely caught up in organic chemistry lab now. Kay and I went to the Rec and then out to Presti's. The wine was vile, but they have the really fine draught beer on tap again. We had one hell of a good evening and a nice schwantz. I met Duff and Bruce and Timmy's afterward to pay off the election bet. The beer was from Milan and Stinko. I went over to the MB and got 3rd East set to play us tomorrow. The review printed our letter. December 2nd. I had 9 hours sleep again and have had another big day. Our football game this afternoon was great sport, and we were lucky enough to win 6-0. Boy, were we shot afterwards. The three of us tripled to the opening basketball game this evening and watched Oberlin trounce Cleveland Naval Training Station 60-42. It was close until the last quarter. We all went to the all-college Rec afterwards. Good time there. Kay had to be in at 11:30 for an announcement party. December 3rd. We bowled with Norman the Mormon this morning instead of going to church. Slept and did 2 physics assignments this afternoon. Bruce and I doubled to the show this evening with Little and Habif. They took 11 purs, and we went over to the Y building afterward. Bruce picked the lock on the back door and let the rest of us in. Oh my, what a torrid time. Wow. What's more, Partridge borrowed a key, so we won't have to wait to get in next time. Ho-hum. To be continued. So that concludes our today's presentation of John S. Ray's Oberlin College Diary, 1944 into 1945, Part 8. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. Good luck with your own efforts in family history. If this is something that interests you in collecting old letters and diaries and printing them up for family members and interviewing elderly family members while they're still alive. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.